Good morning and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here. It is good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Jillian Lampert. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of our board of directors. If you're somewhat new to our church community and haven't filled out a digital guest card, please find the link in the chat box. We'd love to learn a little bit more about you so that we can communicate with you more effectively. We aren't sharing any joys or sorrows in this week's meditation. If you would like to share one for next week's meditation, please fill out the form online. You'll find the link in the chat. Please make sure to gain consent before you put someone else's full name in a request. After today's service, please join us for Cyber Social Hour. Reverend Roger will be opening up the Zoom room a few minutes after the service. The link is in the chat. We are still looking for more help with cook teams and meal helpers as we start up more regular Wednesday evening meals and programs in September. Check the weekly e-news for more information. A link to subscribe will be in the chat. Be sure to mark your calendars for next Sunday, September 11th. Our annual tradition of celebrating water communion is moving outdoors. We'll be meeting at the park across the street from the church. Please bring water that is special to you, whether it came from far away or from your own tap or garden hose. After the service, we will have a potluck and the White Bear Big Band will be playing. Please join us. Finally, we warmly welcome Rebecca Gonzalez-Campoy to our pulpit today. Rebecca is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist in spirit and practice. She joined Unity Church Unitarian in 2016 and began a Master's of Divinity program in UU Social Transformation at United Seminary in the Twin Cities in the fall of 2020. She runs her husband Mike's endocrinology clinic in Eagan and volunteers with several anti-racism multicultural programs at Unity. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Jack, and I use he, him pronouns.
Good morning. My name is Ellie Rogers, and my pronouns are she, her. When I graduated from college, I looked for work somewhere unfamiliar. I guess some part of me felt I needed that experience since my college was a 20-minute drive from my childhood home. I found a one-year position in a town tucked in the valley between the North Cascades and the Salish Sea in Washington State. My brother offered to road trip there with me, so I packed as much as I could fit in my Honda Civic, and off we went. Less than halfway there, as the red sun set over the endless road in Montana, I panicked. I begged my brother to turn around. What was I thinking, leaving everyone and everything I knew? 2 days in, all I wanted was to go back. I'm lucky my brother was driving. I'm lucky he listened and understood me, and also continued to point out the wild beauty crescendoing beyond our car as we sped west. When he left me at my new house with strangers for housemates, I was certain I'd come home right after the year was up. The Pacific Northwest is a wonderland, but I moved there in the fall and nursed loneliness through the rainy season. At first, the Midwesterner in me even judged all those mountains and islands and tall trees, so showy. And there was no snow to amplify the little light in winter, so nights felt completely dark. But then spring arrived in February. Hard to beat that. And the strangers who were my housemates became really good friends. When the mountain passes opened and I hiked switchbacks to my first alpine meadow, I realized something had shifted and I couldn't leave yet. 6 years later, I packed up my Honda Civic again and drove away from Washington to move east with my partner. It didn't take long on that drive for grief to set off the familiar alarm. Turn the car around. What was I thinking? I'm lucky Lewis was driving. I'm lucky he listened and understood me and also continued to dream with me about where we were going and how our lives might unfold there. It was hard to leave, and it didn't matter which direction the car was headed, west or east, only that it was headed away from what I'd known and loved before. And yet, looking back now, I know each new place has become a home. I light the chalice today for us, for our congregation, as we enter our second year of ministerial transition, our second fall after Reverend Victoria stepped away. We're on the road together. As a member of the committee you've entrusted to search for our next lead minister, I want you to know we are so eager to listen to you as we journey, whatever you are feeling and thinking there in the seat next to us, and to continue to dream with you about where we are going and how our life together might unfold. Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn is We Are a Gentle, Angry People, number 170 in the gray hardback hymnal. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Good morning. My name is Amy, and my pronouns are she, her. This morning's story comes from Karen Herring's book, Trusting Change, and is an invitation into a practice of sacred imagination. So take a breath. Close your eyes if you are comfortable, and notice what this story is shifting inside of you as I read the words. You know the story, learned it as a child, maybe even watched it up close. But listen as I tell it again from the inside. It begins so quietly you cannot hear it, and so small you can barely see it. Each monarch egg is attached to the underside of a milkweed leaf the size of a small white period. But that is misleading. This is not a sentence that has ended. Each of these periods marks a possible beginning. The egg hatches into a larva born of hunger. Eating its way into the world, it devours the shell that held it, then moves on to eat the leaf beneath it. In a matter of days, the larva consumes more and more leaves, eating its way into visibility as a lengthened, wrinkled appetite, a striped caterpillar determined to grow. 4 or 5 times the caterpillar sheds its skin like an unwanted too small glove, then preparing to grow in ways that size cannot measure and skin cannot contain, the caterpillar develops a new shell under its final layer of skin. It turns upside down, practicing a radically new view and spinning from its back end a sturdy silken clasp from which its transformation will be suspended. One more time, it wriggles and squirms as the skin that no longer fits splits open and the shell beneath emerges in a different shape. Wide and curvaceous, taut and smooth, the chrysalis is camouflaged to hide the busy workshop inside, where already the old is dissolving and the new has yet to take form. Here on the inside is where I call your attention. Like many mysteries, it happens out of sight. But listen, take a breath. Can you hear it humming? Protected by the chrysalis, the caterpillar digests itself, releasing enzymes that break down all shape and form, caterpillar legs, eyes, mouth, its whole caterpillar way of being. It becomes a mass of goo, a thick soup cooking up something new. Only a few parts of the caterpillar will not be consumed. Latent imaginal discs, a set of highly organized cells embedded from the beginning that contain everything needed for the change that lies ahead. Take a breath. Imagine. The imaginal discs have been there all along, just waiting, designed to awaken in this breakdown and bring new shapes to the chaos. Wings and eyes and curled antennae. Like reverse fossils from the future, they are coded for metamorphosis, for emergence, when all else has been dissolved and lost. But before they take on form, they begin with a thrumming. Vibrating at frequencies unknown in the old caterpillar, the imaginal discs multiply rapidly. They cluster according to like resonance, communicating with each other until they grow into a shared knowledge of how to be something new. All have molded the identity of caterpillar. One cluster becomes an eye, another becomes a wing, another a leg, each tailored to a butterfly's ways, to the butterfly's needs. They take on shapes and functions while linking to one another, their own development dependent on the others. And in that interdependence, they become whole. They become one, a new organism unlike any other thing that has preceded it, brand new, ready to emerge, orange and black to ward off attack, fantastically designed for flight, migration across multiple generations, for survival across distance and seasons. Take a breath. Can you feel it? The humming in the story that calls to each of us now? Are you listening to the ancient rhythms resounding in the between, old instructions for new arrangements, beckoning us to ask who we are becoming? In the chaos of great change, what imaginable possibilities are waiting to awaken in you, in me, in us, in the world? Are you willing to let go of what you know now to become something new? Take a breath.
Let's continue with that breath as we head into a meditation on breathing, intended to make more and more space for imagination. Find a comfortable seat for your body, feeling grounded and rooted here in this space and time. What imaginal possibilities are waiting to awaken? Can you hear them humming? As those possibilities continue to hum, pay attention to your breath, each inhale and exhale. Letting your body transform each breath into what it is that you need. Breathing in peace, breathing out joy, breathing in compassion, breathing out connection, breathing in imagination, breathing out the possible, breathing in hopes and dreams, breathing out action, breathing in individual stories, breathing out a sense of solidarity and community. Breathing in pain and suffering. Breathing out wisdom. Breathing in a sense of overreaction. Breathing out a sense of equanimity and calm. Breathing in self-righteousness. Breathing out humility. Breathing in temporary anxieties. Breathing out long-term vision. Breathing in the chaotic swirls of change. Breathing out steady progress. On this cusp of change and transformation, continue this calm and steady breath as we pray. This morning we hold all of those whom we know and love, who need a little extra light and love right now, ourselves included. Feel free to name them out loud into this space and time. Whatever our current struggles or challenges, may we know peace. Whatever our trauma and loss, may we know healing. Whatever our confusion and frustration, may we know clarity. May we hold out hope for a future yet to come, and may we believe in our strength to help bring it about. May it be so. Amen.
Twice a month, our offering goes to a local nonprofit, and the other Sundays, it stays right here at WBUUC to pay our staff and fund our programs and keep our lights on. You can donate in 3 ways. 1, on the WBUUC webpage, 2, by sending a check, and 3, by using the text to give option printed in your order of service or in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we lead together.
Our reading this morning is One Love by Hope Johnson. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one. Working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one.
Good morning. I'm Becky Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. The moment I heard the news, though it would take years to know what it meant, what it would bring, what it would claim, the moment I heard the news, I was no longer the same. Already leaving what I knew, what I loved, what I had forgotten would not last, letting go, with nothing new to grasp, just letting go. Letting go. Letting go of what was never mine to hold, while the wind brushed across my open-cupped hands and the soft moonlight sifted down, slipping through my fingers to the ground below. Letting go. This poem from Reverend Karen Herring's newly published book, Trusting Change, Finding Our Way Through Personal Global Transformation, invites us to embark on the adventure of crossing thresholds, leaving behind what no longer serves us, pushing us to get our bearings, to imagine what if, and then moving into what lies ahead, one step at a time if need be. Change is all around us. Women's reproductive rights, fought for and acquired 50 years ago, are under siege, as is the unimpeded right to love who you love, gained just in the last decade. On an even larger scale, our democracy is on the brink of destruction as insurgents storm our capital and state governments restrict how votes are cast and counted. Not to mention the attack on our schools, both by impaired people with unchecked access to guns of mass destruction, with no serious game plan to address gun violence at any level in sight, and white parents and politicians who want to redact the full story of American history. You likely are here to get away from all this hopelessness and hatred, to instead nourish your soul and regenerate your commitment to the fight for freedom and justice for all. Or maybe you came for the music and readings to strengthen your spiritual practice. I hope to meet most of these needs. However, I cannot promise it will be comfortable, because we're going to talk about change. Change, that ubiquitous word that sends adrenaline rushing throughout our body, brought on either by excitement or dread. Specifically, I want to address the change that you as a faith community will likely need to make in order to acknowledge and honor your differences as you seek a settled minister that you all can embrace and agree to hire. I know a little bit about this, as I am an active member of Unity Church Unitarian in St. Paul. Like you, we're entering our second year of transition as we consider and define who we are as a congregation and who we want to become. So let's start with these words from Reverend Herring. Change echoes. When we experience change on a personal level, its disturbances will bounce back from changes happening on shared community or global levels, amplifying any changes we encounter, and vice versa. Rather than becoming overwhelmed by these echoes or shutting them out, we can make use of change on one level to participate in shaping change occurring at other levels. Because the skills needed for healthy participation in global change are directly related to the skills needed for shaping changes in our intimate lives and the other way around. We can move to the rhythms of change reverberating at any one level, and they will support our participation in other levels. To apply some of the wisdom put forth in Reverend Herring's book and apply it to our present, we best visit our past first. For to understand where we must go, we must know where we've been, to remember, but not to romanticize. I'm going to take us back to the 19th century, to the time of the Enlightenment. During this era, European theologians were fiercely debating the ways humans acquire and practice the Christian faith in light of the Reformation, advances in science, and application of new methods of research. This era called into question how we view ourselves and our place in the universe. How do we authentically follow the teachings of Jesus and achieve salvation? What role does the historical Jesus play, or do we focus on the Christ of faith alone? Do we experience the divine through reason and rational thought, or do we intuit it? Is faith a gift of God through grace, or is it knowledge of the eternal inherent? We just need the right teacher to open our eyes. Is Christianity the ultimate expression of faith, or does it have a place among many world religions, philosophies, and spiritual practices, each valid in their own right? All aspects of biblical interpretation came under fire as theologians and philosophers revolted against ecclesiastical authority, rejecting one another's theses in favor of new schools of thought that redefined the Christian religion. However, as with most movements in one direction, there followed a backlash. Pretty soon the Protestants divided into two camps: the liberals, from whom the UUs descended, and conservatives, from which today's fundamentalists emerged. The liberals believed that our faith consciousness continued to evolve and be impacted by current cultural discoveries and realities. The conservatives wanted to hang on to the established beliefs and traditions, seeing developments like Darwin's theory of evolution as threats to the very essence of Christianity and to the human place of special creation. Unitarians had a cameo role in the Enlightenment stories. Prominent Unitarian ministers and philosophers gravitated toward transcendentalism. It didn't create remarkable waves in the larger debates among Christian theologians, but the transcendentalist movement contributed to an identity crisis of our own during the Enlightenment. Theodore Parker is touted as the most important Unitarian minister of his era. An unabashed transcendentalist, he preached that the Bible was full of contradictions and errors, that Jesus had no miraculous authority, that the biblical miracles were myths, and that society needed radical reform, writes Dean Grodzins in his introduction to The Transient and Permanent in Christianity, which is a sermon that Parker gave at ordination in South Boston in 1841. However, this particular sermon did not mention Parker's controversial positions. His main points were the word of Jesus would live on or be permanent, and everything else was transient. Yet, the sermon created great controversy in the Christian community, causing Unitarian leadership to distance themselves from Parker, while ordinary Unitarians devoured his writings and preaching. Unity, my home church, as I said, was founded in 1872 on progressive Christian values that sought to bridge differences within the Unitarian denomination in the 19th century. Emily Mace describes William Channing Gannett, one of Unity's early ministers, as a reformer favoring the rights both of women and of African Americans, and a second-generation transcendentalist, in her introduction to Gannett's Things Commonly Believed Among Us. Gannett wrote this essay in 1987, hoping to bridge the growing gap between Christian-centered Unitarians and those, such as himself, who favored a more progressive post-Christian Unitarianism. That statement laid the groundwork for what would become our 7 principles. This cursory synopsis of 19th century Christianity is relevant to us as Unitarian Universalists because the core questions of this era provide a mirror for us now for reflection as we stand at a crossroads with the future of our churches and that of the UUA as a whole. What does it mean to be a UU person of faith? How do we break down the old to create something new? Christians in the 19th century faced profound change and lined up on opposing sides. Our Unitarian ancestors faced change and, in true liberal Christian practice, sought a way to mediate those differences. Both of our congregations have faced adversity at one time or another over the course of our respective histories and evolved into something stronger and better. What road will we take? The most relevant of Gannett's statements for today's consideration include, first, we hold reason and conscience to be the final authorities in matters of religious belief. And second, we believe that we ought to join hands and work to make the good things better and the worse good, counting nothing good for itself that is not good for all. That's the crux of where we are now, isn't it? Faced with change, we are individually and collectively using reason and following our conscience as we discern who we want to take us forward. I suspect that some of us want our church to be what it was when we first joined, whether it be a few months ago or decades gone by. Perhaps that's why we wrestle with the second statement. Our churches are among the largest UU congregations in the country, with about 750 to 1,000 active members that run the spiritual spectrum. We are Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, pagans, Wiccans, humanists, atheists, agnostics, transcendentalists, pantheists, and some combination of the aforementioned. We are queer, straight, non-binary, and of course, of various abilities. We are slowly becoming more multicultural. In short, our demographics might occupy uncomfortable space if we don't take the time for honest conversation grounded in our covenant of 7 principles. And I don't mean using the typical passive-aggressive Minnesota style either. We must confront or face our concerns and hopes with clear eyes and open hearts. Here are some questions to consider. With a history as a teaching congregation that prepares young ministers to land settled positions elsewhere, will we accept such a candidate here, or we can help them grow and evolve? Or do we want someone with deeper experience in leadership, anti-racist multicultural work, and pastoral care for all ages? Do we see this as an opportunity to leap forward, or do we prefer to hold fast to tradition? I recognize that these are binary questions, but yes and won't work in the end. We'll either vote to hire someone or not. Any discord that may arise will be complex, and I want to stop here and point out that it won't necessarily be age-based in a way you might imagine. I'm an older UU, a cradle UU at my seminary, and I have to tell you that in my classes, I've noticed that it's younger cradle UUs that lean toward a more mystical, God-based faith than we elders. More to the point, if we have 15 UU students in one place, you can be sure that there are at least 15 different opinions on the table, sometimes more if we're feeling particularly provocative. Still, I'm confident that we can bridge any chasms that may arise. As I said before, we've encountered tumultuous times in the past. Clearly, the congregation does prevail and move forward. Change is hard. It's messy. No pressure, but the rest of the UU community across the country is watching. Voting no on a proposed leading minister rarely happens, but it can. Unity just did so in May. The UUA tells us we don't have many options. There just isn't a large pool of available ministers for hire. So how do we grow into a beloved community that someone will have the courage to take on? How do we gain the confidence to make the leap of faith to welcome new leadership, especially if that person doesn't meet every single thing on our list of must-haves? First, we must pause as we are now. Take stock of our concerns, grievances, differences, hopes, and joys. Remember, we are religious liberals. We are religious people who accept and even lean into change. How will we collectively confront the changes and challenges we now face as a community? As Reverend Herring reminds us, participating in change is a shared task. Whether we're talking about individual or collective change, we need the gifts of companioning on the threshold. We need others' observations to widen our own perspective, their gifts to supplement our own abilities, and their assistance to help us cross those thresholds that will be too high, too terrifying, and too bewildering to traverse on our own. True interdependence is what makes it possible to trust change. We will never think as one, but we must take that first step. As our ancestors did, we must decide who we are and who we want to become. Not only what are our shared values, but what do we believe to be true about those values? What does living those shared values authentically look like? Only then can we get down to the difficult business of determining who will lead us forward. May it be so, and amen. Please join us now for the closing hymn, 1028, in the teal hymnal, Fire of Commitment.
Set free from fear, when the fire
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.